today we're talking about a patriotic present. All right. So, shamrocks was the trademark of Ireland's leading harp maker in the early 19th century. And his signature was J. Egan, inventor, 30 Dawson Street, Dublin. And John Egan indeed was an inventor. Perhaps his greatest innovation was the portable Irish harp, as you see here. This one with diddles is at Byrne Castle, and we have one here that we'll be looking at later, owned by the Historical Harp Society of Ireland. And he also made portable Irish harps with ring stops. He began his career as a pedal harp maker in 1797. And that was the popular model that, of course, originated in France. And he produced, this is the sort of instrument, he made a really lovely one at the Lisburn Museum. He produced single action, double action, and even invented a triple action pedal harp, capable of every major and minor key. You know, he really was an inventor. He crafted harps in different sizes. This harp is just 16 inches tall and has 15 strings. And this is what it would have looked like decorated. And thanks very much to Simon Chadwick for this image. By the way, has Simon Chadwick been recognized for his website? Should we?
We fall at his feet every morning when we come in.
It is a fantastic resource.
Or is that just me?
I use him all the time. You know, I'm just like, what was the date? What was the, you know, and he's so generous to put that online for us. And it's very well done and scholarly, and, you know, I could go on and on, but I won't. Okay. So anyway, Egan also made wire-strung harps, Irish revival harps, for the Harp Society schools. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. But this inventor, his imagination, it seems, was boundless. He even took this symbol for Irish independence and fashioned it into a winged maiden harp, which he presented to King George IV. John Egan was originally apprenticed to a smith, and after successfully crafting a pedal harp and selling it, he decided to become a harp maker. And he opened his business on Dawson Street. And by 1804, he really had established this business. He started working in 1797. And he was supplying harps to members of the Anglo-Irish aristocracy. At this time, the momentous Act of Union of 1801 had joined Ireland to the United Kingdom. And a British viceroy, or the Lord Lieutenant, was living at the castle in Phoenix Park, and as the king's official representative. And here we see the Duchess of Richmond. She was John Egan's first patron, and he was commissioned to make a pedal harp for her. So this was his world, producing beautiful pedal harps for these high-ranking members of the Anglo-Irish aristocracy and British nobility, you know, the Irish and the great houses, because that was the fashionable harp of the day. But at the same time, in post-Union Ireland, people were interested in a cultural identity separate from England. And so naturally they turned to the native Irish harp that had been played in Ireland for centuries, the Gaelic harp, their own instrument. So, as we know, there were efforts to revive the waning harp tradition in the late 18th century with the festivals and meetings in Grenard and Belfast. And then schools were started for blind children. You probably know all of this already, yes.
It's good. No, it's good to hear it. It's really good to hear it.
Okay, good. Well, the goal was to revive the tradition, and so schools for poor blind children were started, first in Belfast. And the thinking was, we have this tradition of the blind harper, and so let's combine nationalism, revive the Irish harp, with charity for poor blind boys and revive the tradition. And so in 1808, the Belfast Harp Society started a school. And Egan McClellan writes that the harps for the school were made by Mr. White, a mechanic who had previously built 2 organs. So he wasn't really a harp maker as such. These ongoing efforts were chronicled in the newspapers of the day. And you see this, if you pour through the newspapers, you always see the Irish harp, and they all relate to the revival efforts. And here was one in the Freeman's Journal, 14th of October, 1809. And this is the familiar heading, and it says, 1,000 years have nearly passed away without any improvement having been made upon this sweet instrument. And then it continues with hints of an improved Irish harp, and extols the pioneering work of our ingenious countryman, Mr. John Egan of this city. And then it concludes with an important announcement. We understand that Mr. Egan has now finished an Irish harp, which for ingenuity of construction, elegance of form, and sweetness of tone are highly creditable to his talents. This harp Mr. Egan intends as a patriotic present to the charitable institution of the Irish Harp Society. And inscribed on the soundboard was a poem. The harp once more at your command, with ancient songs shall charm the land, while each poor blind, poor orphan boy from your high bounty finds employ. May Erin's harp sweet peace prolong, and glad inspire the dance and song. So, the celebrated maker John Egan had created a wire-strung Irish harp. Somewhat of a paradox, in that Egan, who prided himself, he was an inventor, right? And being in the forefront of design innovation and new mechanisms, had now decided to make an Irish harp whose basic organological components had remained constant for 1,000 years.
Nancy,
Yes.
can we just remind people that the societies that he's making these for had Arthur O'Neill as their tutor?
Oh,
So
that's coming up,
To
yes.
tie us in, okay.
Yes,
Sorry.
yes, it's coming up, but please, join in to make it relevant.
Because we've been talking about him all week, you see. So.
Oh, right, oh yes, we're gonna see him.
Sorry.
We're gonna see one of his pupils. Okay, so, however, the phrase ingenuity of construction hinted at a change in design. With this patriotic present, Egan secured a place for himself in the harp revival movement. And the gift eventually led to his appointment as harp maker to the Dublin Harp Society. So, what did the harp look like? Well, Robert Bruce Armstrong saw the harp 100 years later, and he observed Egan, when constructing this harp, must have had an ancient harp before him, the form of which he followed with slight variations. So it's impossible to know what harp Egan had before him. But he was certainly familiar with the Gaelic harp, because there are references of gCláirseachs at Egan's shop. I mean, one that we know about from Bunting's 1840 volume is that Patrick Quinn's harp, or the Castle Otway harp, was seen, Bunting saw it at Egan's shop, but he calls him the late harp maker, but we don't know how long that gCláirseach had been there. And we also know that Egan restrung at least one ancient harp that was discovered in a bog near Limerick. So he really had studied at least one or two ancient harps. Anyway, Armstrong described Egan's harp as having a projecting block and semicircular curves at each side, like we see here the Fitzgerald harp, for instance. This is in the National Museum of Ireland. And like the O'Fogarty harp, it had 36 wire strings, was 4 feet in height, and may have originally had a carved scroll. However, Egan's harp had a built-up soundbox from joined pieces of wood instead of the traditional hollowed log construction of the Gaelic harps. But there are a few surviving cláirseachs from the 18th century that were made this way, right? Including the Hollybrook harp and the harp at Clonal's house, is that correct, Simon? And then 2 other harps with built-up sound boxes came to light briefly in the 1970s and were exhibited at Malahide Castle. And I found out yesterday, Anne Heyman saw those harps. Yes! So, I wish I'd known that. But anyway, oh, this is the Hollybrook harp, sorry, with the built-up sound box. So this is the Malahide 2 harp that was on display in the 1980s. And Nicholas Carolyn wrote an article about 2 of these harps in 1984 and wrote in detail, he measured them, etc. And I was looking at that and reading it, and I thought, wait a minute, there's a similarity here. And so I started just, making a chart and seeing what was similar. Well, the height, according to Armstrong, and then according to Nicholas Carolyn's article, the height is similar, but Armstrong tells us that the finial has been changed out. So it may have actually been the same. The soundboard width is similar, the string lengths are comparable, the shape is the same, and the Malahide harp has shamrocks with gilt edging, which was John Egan's trademark. So I acquired some additional photos, although I wish I'd had Anne Heyman's photos. And, I'm very curious about this label inside, too. I don't know anything about that. But I got some more photos from the Irish Traditional Music Archive, and there is evidence of a brass band through which the tuning pins passed, which was mentioned in Armstrong. The neck seems to somewhat reflect pedal harp design, too, which would make sense. But I couldn't really see a poem on the soundboard, although Armstrong saw the harp was about 100 years old when Armstrong saw it, and he said that the painting had somewhat faded. And then Nicholas Carolyn saw it in the 1980s. So here we see an Egan harp. There's actually an inscription here. And you can see how on these harps, painted inscriptions do fade over time, and they just almost disappear. We can contrast the shamrocks, which are not quite the same. But this harp is on the right is 10 years later than the one on the left. So I'm thinking, if this is not, in fact, Egan's patriotic present for the Dublin Harp Society, it might be by Egan, or Egan might have known of this harp. We just don't know. But I do feel that this is a good representation of that first harp that Egan gave to the Dublin Harp Society. So here we have the rules and regulations from 1810 of the Irish Harp Society of Dublin. And Egan is listed as a subscriber. And the policy on harps was to develop an improved model, and it was stated in the purpose of the society to revive the native music and poetry of Ireland, and also to improve the Irish harp. Rule number 11 states, "It is not essential to its character that it should remain as it is now, but may be further improved, either in its size, shape, or the number and quality of its strings, consistently with the origin and principles of the instrument." And the next rule, that one of the objects of the Irish Harp Society shall be the further improvement. They love that word, didn't they? This was the improving age. The improvement of the instrument, which province shall be exclusively the department of the committees of music and literature. So let's see who's on those committees. Well, there are some familiar names here. Thomas Moore and Sir John Stevenson, and they had just brought out their first number of the Irish Melodies. We see the band leader Thomas Cook, as well as the music publisher I. Willis. But Egan is not actually listed, which is interesting. And these rules were written in the summer of 1809, but they weren't published till 1810. And Egan presented his patriotic present in the fall, in October of 1809. So it's a little unclear. The gift predates the actual printing of the rules. So the extent of John Egan's influence on this model of harp is really not known, or just the ancient gCláirseachs. It was to improve the model, right? They really believed that for the Irish harp, what they call the Irish harp, to continue, a new model, a new improved model needed to be invented, one that everyone would want to have, and then the tradition would continue. You know, that's just what they thought. And it was, the wire-strung harp was seen as a vehicle for disseminating the music. You know, they were interested in the continuation of the music. They didn't treasure the look of the ancient gCláirseach as we do today. Does that make sense to everyone? So here's another rule that says harps would be supplied to the pupils as a means of future support and of diffusing the improvement through the country, and that a number of harps shall be made for that person, provided always they be cheap and portable. Okay? So that was really a goal of the society. And it was the hope that this new model that was cheap, portable, would become widespread throughout the country. Harps needed to be cheap because now the society was paying for the harps, right? It was unlike the old days when a patron provided a hand-carved instrument for his harper. The society's minutes in 1812 revealed that John Egan was given a sum of £30. It's a lot of money in those days, just for his ingenuity in his improved design, right? I mean, people on the lower spectrum of society could earn £30 in a year. You know, that was a lot of money. And then a further £10 was given to him for the expense in constructing models for the society. And that same year, the society closed. The next year, the Belfast School also closed. And really, none of the harps from the Dublin Society have survived, as far as we know. So the few rare examples of Egan's improved Irish harp were all manufactured at a later date for the second Belfast Society School. And that school flourished from 1819 to 1839. You know, I think that's quite an accomplishment, 20 years. I read in sources, oh, it was only 20 years. 20 years? I think that's something, actually. And all the harps that we believe were made by John Egan. Thanks again to Simon Chadwick for this postcard. It's really lovely. This harp is in the National Museum of Ireland. And so now, this is one of the harps made at least past 1819, right? 10 years later than the one on the left. The one on the left is the Malahide harp, but I'm just using it as a pattern for Egan's. And so we can see how the design has changed. The harps were now taller by 20 centimeters or 8 inches. There's no carving on the pillar of the new ones. Well, that's in line with the goal: simpler, cheaper to make. The harmonic curve is deeper now. The neck, instead of rising from the center of the sound box on the left, it emerges from a knee block to the player's right, more like a pedal harp. But the most striking change, really, is the sound box, because no longer do we have a rectangular box with a projecting block, but we have this conical semicircular back, right? And it's a freestanding instrument. Instead of a single cross-grained piece for the soundboard, Egan's using sections of horizontally grained wood. And another important difference, now the greatest depth is at the bottom instead of at the top, as it was in the Gaelic harp. So the design intent was really for a freestanding instrument. It's more lightweight, more portable, and his decoration is essentially the same, green shamrocks. I mean, we think, we see shamrocks on t-shirts and caps and whatnot, and tourist trash. In the early 1800s, it really meant something. This is post-Union Ireland. Shamrocks meant something. Harps meant something. This is our country. This is our heritage. Wolfhounds, increasingly throughout the 19th century, these symbols were very potent reminders that even though we are part of the Union with Great Britain, this is Ireland. These are, it's our shamrocks. And speaking of shamrocks, John Egan's, on his Belfast harps, gold shamrocks on the harmonic curve and the pillar was what he used. And we see that on the O'Neill harp in the Ulster Museum, which is interesting. This, of course, is from Armstrong. It also has gold shamrocks. I was there a couple of days ago, and you can just barely see the shamrocks there.
Does it have a one-piece soundbox, that one?
No. I think I checked that on your website, by the way. But does it look...
I never checked my website.
Well, you should. But doesn't it look similar in shape, high-headed, very similar. When I first saw that, I was like, oh, I must see this harp. That's what he copied, surely. But I think it's a hollowed out. You can look it up again, but that's what I think. But anyway, when Armstrong saw this O'Neill harp, he writes that there are several layers of decoration present on the instrument. So, conceivably, someone at some point, in maybe 1840, might have wanted to copy Egan's harps. We don't know. We don't know, do we? Or Egan might have seen this and copied the gold shamrocks. This is what keeps me awake at night.
You don't think Egan did the shamrocks on the
No.
other one? They're a different style, are they?
No, I don't think he did no. And he wouldn't do, why would he do that? He would not do that.
I don't know, perhaps
Yeah,
somebody
he's
had an old
making his
harp
own
that was
harps.
dirty, and
Sorry?
perhaps somebody took an old harp and said, can you tart this one up a bit? So he put sham or something.
Um,
I don't know, I'm
he
just
did
thinking
repair
sideways.
harps. He did repair harps, but no.
Okay.
He was an inventor. He was more into what can I do next, and really starting out as a pedal harp maker. You know, I think he was very interested in the Irish harp revival, and I think he was, even though he was harp maker to the king, I think he was an Irishman. You know, I mean, why would you give a harp fashioned in the symbol of independence to the King of England? I think he made more money making the portables and the pedal harps too. Did that answer your question?
Thank you.
Okay, to date, 6 of these Belfast School harps have come to light. 2 are privately owned. There's one in Ohio, one in France. 2 are in the National Museum of Ireland. There's another one in Enniskillen Castle in Northern Ireland, and one is in England at the Fitzwilliam Museum. So what can we learn from this table? Well, they're all basically the same height. Any discrepancies in the measurements can pretty much be explained by new bases added, you know, or like the Enniskillen one has a new pillar. These harps get a lot of woodworm damage, and
Sorry,
parts were
Nancy, just
replaced.
in case I forget,
Yes.
you know about the harp in Drogheda, the society harp that's in Drogheda?
I wrote an article about it.
Okay, that's fine, I just didn't see it in the list, so.
Well, no, these are just for the Belfast Society.
All right,
School.
thank you.
Yes.
These are just the
Thank you.
Egan ones.
Oh,
yeah.
just-
Yes, yes. In fact, I'm showing the Drogheda
Okay,
harp
that's
here. in a
fine.
minute.
Sorry, of course you
Yeah.
wrote an article about the other one.
Yeah, yeah.
We're cogs
Yeah,
moving slow.
because it's actually in 2008, I was giving a lecture at the Royal Irish Academy on Egan, and this wonderful gentleman raised his hand at the end, and he said, I have a Drogheda Harp Society harp that was played at the Monster Repeal meeting for Daniel O'Connell, and everyone, you know, gasped. And as soon as I could get back to Ireland the next year, I saw it, and we'll see it here. So anyway, the depth is slightly greater on the last 2 harps, and I think the pillars are just slightly more bowed. I think that explains that. The soundboard width is fairly consistent, but the greatest differences really are in the decoration on the instruments, and that's what I use for my dating purposes. So this one, can you see this? I don't know if we should. Thank you. This is in the National Museum of Ireland. It's really difficult to photograph these instruments, you know, with the fluorescent lighting and whatnot. Is this in focus, do you think, Simon? Okay, all right. All right, thank you. So anyway, we can see it's high-headed. It does look a little like the O'Neill harp, doesn't it? This harp is interesting for its Gaelic inscriptions. The neck of this instrument is formed of several pieces of wood. In contrast to many of the Gaelic harps have just a single piece harmonic curve, correct? And Armstrong talks about this in his book. He says, a number of pieces of wood are carefully joined. There are 2 complete pieces, one of these in the center, the other on the right side, and between these on the left side are several pieces joined together, right? So you can actually see that here. The purpose is for greater strength to counteract the wire strings. And Armstrong writes that with this construction, metal bands are not needed for the tuning pins because they can actually stay in the wood with this complicated construction. And you can really see the knee block leading to the player's right. And then for further reinforcement, there's an iron band underneath the harmonic curve, and it's screwed on. And it extends the entire length. There are some vertical cracks on some of these harps, and you can see the repairs with the brass bands, and that's what we see on some of the gCláirseachs as well. On the upper part of the harp, we have shamrocks and figure eights, and then these Gaelic inscriptions in the bottom. And oh, my Gaelic speaker.
Kjol, what's the second? I
Bin.
can't see it. Kjol
Bin.
Bin Heron?
Yeah.
The sweet
Sweet music of Ireland, right? Oh, good. And then, oh yeah, there it is. And this is the crown of independence within a wreath of shamrocks. The antique crown, which is a symbol for independence. And then this. So curious. Okay, that's the red hand of, right? The red hand of Ireland. And that's the O'Neill symbol, right? The red hand of Ireland.
Love Jerry.
Love?
Love Jerry.
Love Jarek.
I think it's
Love
Love
Jarek
Muse.
Erin. Okay.
Oh no, that's the next.
Love Jarek Erin. Red Hand Ireland.
Right. That's what I've asked several people about this. I'm not sure who this figure on the top. It may not be anyone. I mean, there was a time when I thought maybe it was wolf tone.
On top of the harp.
Yeah, on the finial.
Somebody, isn't it?
It's very curious, and if you have any ideas, you know, I would love to hear them.
It's not the winged lady, is it? It's
No,
definitely
no. But you know why? I mean, O'Neill, well, perhaps there was a sponsor who donated money to the school, or perhaps one of the pupils had a connection to the O'Neill family. And this is the right side. So, do you want to say my Gaelic speaker?
Scoil and the rest.
I think it's Love Music, and then the Milesian clan, which has, you know, all the connections to music. And then underneath, this is the Order of St. Patrick. And yeah, who will separate us is the translation. And 1783, that was the year that George III founded the Order of St. Patrick. And here we see them at the founding dinner, and they're all in their, you know, fancy capes and everything. And that was still going on, you know, in the 1820s. When George IV visited Ireland in 1821, there were grand ceremonies in St. Patrick's Cathedral for those receiving the Order of St. Patrick. It was a British order of chivalry for services to Ireland. And why on this harp? Well, perhaps it was actually Nicholas Carolyn who thought, perhaps, I asked him about this, that maybe it was a sponsor, gave a donation to the Harp Society. If you have any ideas, I'd love to hear them. Okay, this harp is in Enniskillen Castle, and it came to the Fermanagh County Museum in 1977. It had been handed down through the Maguire family and lived in a convent for many years with the Sisters of Mercy, and it was kept by Miss Margaret Maguire right up until the 1880s. And here we see they're donating it to the museum. And the harp had extensive woodworm damage on the lower soundboard. The harp, here again, the same shape. It's looks quite handsome in this sort of mahogany finish, but I think all of that is a restoration. So we see, yeah, we can just barely see traces of shamrocks on the upper portion of the instrument, and they look red, but you can see little flecks of green paint. So I think the red was an undersketch.
Sometimes you use a red as an underlay for gold leaf.
Yes, you know, I've been on to Michael Parfit asking him these questions, definitely for gold leaf as well. But when we look at the other extant Society School harps, the soundboards, shamrocks tend to be green.
Especially when they're cheap, aren't they? So.
Yes, yes. Although they do have gold leaf on the pillars. So, but yes, I was wondering that too. Anyway. So there were shamrocks in the upper portion, and down below, when I saw this, I couldn't believe it. Because you know what that is?
Yeah.
Oh. How incongruous is it to, on a wire-strung harp. This is an ad from the 1824 Piggott and Co.'s City of Dublin and Hibernian Provincial Directory. And it promotes Egan's portable Irish harp, like the one you have in the HHS High collection, we're going to see. But it says on the ad, the portable Irish harp is strung with gut and capable of making as many changes of keys as a pedal harp. And they stuck this on a wire-strung harp tuned in modes. But I think they just thought it made it look more presentable, you know, covering the woodward damage. They didn't know what they were doing. But very curious, very curious.
That was later on to cover up damage.
You know, I don't want to point fingers, but it may have happened in the convent.
It's
Because
interesting that they had two copies as well,
Yeah.
because you wouldn't normally get duplicates of these prints, would you?
well, it may not be, you know, it's not from an original directory, because when you look at
Oh, you think it's a
the
photo-
directory is
like
this big, right?
Ah, so it's like
So
a
they
photocopy.
blown it up somehow. I mean, it could have been done in the early 70s, the 60s, and they blew it up. We had photocopies then, right? And they could have, you know, and then stuck it on varnish. Oh, lovely. Covered it all up. But even the worms came through, didn't they?
But there's a stamp.
Oh, that's the red paint.
Yeah, but it
At
comes
the
over
top,
on,
yes.
It comes over onto the on top of.
Yes, but I think that's a restoration.
Yeah.
I think that's touched up, yeah. Oh, Egan would not do that. No, no. I'm pretty convinced
Well, I think
of that.
they probably just tried to make it sort of blend in the wood.
Yeah, because why would Egan do that? There's no reason he would do that. But there is a reason with woodworm damage, and it was so extensive on this instrument that this is a brand new pillar. So I really believe that's what happened there. So I find that each of these 6 harps are interesting for different reasons. And the next one, oh no, sorry. Forgot about this. I think these pegs are restoration. You know, they're not quite right. They're a bit too long. But you can see the iron band.
Is it original?
What?
They're
Oh yes, those parts are original, but I think this varnish is all new, and maybe some of these string pegs, what are they called? Tuning pins, thank you. I think maybe some of the tuning pins might have been missing, so they just find something. And
So he was actually reinforcing the neck
with the iron band underneath, yes, that is original, yes.
Now, see the Kildare, the Fitzgerald Kildare harp has that iron band as well.
Really?
And it's held together with iron plates with big wood screws, and I've always suspected that this is a 19th century assembly of a harp that had fallen to pieces, and now I'm suddenly thinking, did the Kildare harp go through Egan's shop?
So it's not original, the iron band on
I
the
don't know.
Kildare.
I don't know.
Oh,
But the wood screws don't look 17th century to me.
Yeah.
You know, they look 19th century. So I just suddenly thought,
May
you need to look at that
Oh,
again.
that's so interesting.
If you see in the older harps and the damage and the repairs, he probably should have just put it, this just to be sure, it's
Yeah.
not that
I'm
it's
just
a
thinking
harp.
that specific
Oh, I
iron
wish we
band
could-
underneath
that's
was
what I
on the
would
kill
do.
there.
I wish we could get some dating on that to see if that was, when that was done. I would really love to know that. Okay, so, oh, this is the bottom of the Enniskillen harp, so we can see the inside. These back feet were later additions. I think the front feet are original, but you can see how the sound box was laminated with the different layers of wood. And this was a feature of Egan harps, these linen strips that held the sections of the soundboard together. And you can also see the wooden rods,
Yeah.
just, you know, little touches to keep it all together. So this next harp is interesting for its owner, right? This is Egan number 1933, and it's also in the National Museum at Collins Barracks. And here Robert Bruce Armstrong is photographed playing his harp. In the frontispiece of his landmark volume, The Irish and Highland Harps, which Simon showed us yesterday. Here we see him, here's the harp. And it's interesting, even though Armstrong tells us about the built-up construction of the neck, he also mentions that it does list a little to the left. In spite of the iron band and all the complicated construction, still that pull of the wire strings made the neck twist a little bit. We see the simple shamrock motifs again. And here's the Royal Warrant. The inscription is manufactured for the Belfast Irish Harp Society, number 1933, by J. Egan, Dublin, harp maker to His Majesty George IV and the royal family. And Egan was granted the Royal Warrant in 1821, quite soon after the King visited Ireland. He became harp maker to the King. And then harps after that date have a royal coat of arms or, you know, an inscription as harp maker to George IV. So this harp is interesting also for another reason. These marks, these personal scratches from some former players, may have been students at the Belfast Harp Society schools. Armstrong describes it as, upon the right-hand side of the sounding board are deeply scratched letters and marks, indicating the notes to which the strings were tuned, perhaps to be fingered by a blind boy, as an early lesson, while the fingers of his left hand pull the strings. And you can see this today, the letters. And it starts right above the Royal Warrant and then goes right the way to the end of the harp at the top. There are 21 guiding letters. So they extend 3 octaves from C to B. And here we can see that Egan used staples instead of the nice shoes, you know, that you see on the Gaelic harps. Another legendary player of the, oh sorry?
I have one question. Do we have the letters that are there as in them decide if there are, for instance, double letters somewhere, like the calories?
Yeah, you know, in Armstrong, there's a page where he has the scale. Yeah, Simon, I read it.
Basically, I think that this starts at towards a bit above Macaulay.
It's
so
above it, yes. Because when I first saw that, I was like, oh no, there's not the double G's. But I looked at it carefully, and this is above. This starts with middle C.
I can't make out the letters. Which way up are they?
It looks like you're,
Well,
Looking
they're-
down on the harp,
They're, you know, like this one's upside down. Here, this is, okay, E, F, G, A, B, C.
So they're upside down for us. Yeah.
but the B is,
So for the player, he's
Yeah.
fingering
Okay,
it.
so anybody who's tried my harp will see that it's got paper labels with some letters on it, exactly the same as this. And this is coming from the real Queen Mary harp in the museum. It has upside down letters on the right side of the sound box, so that when you hold the harp on the left and look down, you can read the letters exactly the same.
I'm so glad I gave
So
this
you
lecture.
can look
so
at
I
my
can
harp
learn
and see it because I've stuck those labels on to copy the real Queen Mary.
Really?
So.
Oh, I'm going to see that later. I'm going to see that later. Promise. Okay. So,
But I have a question. I'm seeing marks on here going below, and is that the first string in the very bottom of the picture?
no,
No.
no. There's a whole nother, like, over another octave, maybe two or more
Okay.
octaves. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and if you go into Armstrong, you can see he's written down the scale, and it does
Well,
have
yeah,
the
I know
Nicoli
that,
in it,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And this is above, this is the upper three
Yeah.
octaves,
Mhm.
right, starting at C.
Mhm.
So, so it would have had the Nicoli.
But I mean, I'm seeing marks down at the bottom of the picture.
Yeah, but this is not the
and
bottom of the heart. This
Yes,
is-
yeah, but at the bottom of the picture, I don't see letters there, or?
There
is it
are,
just that
the
there
letters are only for three octaves, they don't go all the way down.
I guess to be clear, so this mark here there's no letter here, or?
Yeah, look, there is, there's a little bit
Yeah, I
of-
can't
there.
see, yeah, that's
There's
what I'm
a big
asking,
printer.
is that, yeah, that's what I'm asking. I just couldn't see it.
Right. Okay, so another legendary player of these Egan harp, wire-strung harps was, of course, Patrick Byrne. And he was known in the Irish press as an Irish harp celebrity. And he delighted audiences for over 40 years, playing at holiday resorts and also at Buckingham Palace for Queen Victoria and Prince Albert. So he had a fantastic career. And as most of you probably already know of this, but in 1845, Byrne was part of a tableau vivant at the Waverley Ball in Edinburgh, posing as the last Irish harper. And here he's in this get-up with a blanket, you know, as the sort of bardic dress, and posing for the photographs for Hill and Adamson. And there are 7 different calotypes, which is an early camera, an early sort of photograph. And it's these photos are a fantastic record of both the harp player and his technique and the harps. So it's just really a wonderful thing that we have these photos. And we can see here in a close-up these really splendid foliate designs, these spirals of shamrocks on the soundboard. And the side and center strips would have been gold. You can see that even in this monochromatic photo. You know, it would have really, think gas lights, or think how that would have just shimmered, you know, in a concert, in a hotel or somewhere as he's performing. So, remarkably, a harp survives in Ohio, and it looks very like Byrne's harp. And we have Anne Heyman and Charlie Heyman to thank for going to see this harp and examining it and these photos, and thank you for letting me use these photos today. And I have actually really looked at this, you know, bit by bit, and they're identical. The swirling shamrocks are identical. I mean, that's still, well, it's still may not be the harp, but I just think this is the harp. I really do.
they were hand-painted.
Yes, they were hand-painted, yes. And they appear right now. This is the harp that I wonder, would that have been gold? and the red and under sketch, because it was from Patrick Byrne, the best student.
How many pictures did I send you?
Oh, lots. Yeah, I'm going to show some
Okay,
more.
so you have.
Yeah.
Did I send you the other photos that I got from them as well? There's a second set that I got direct from the owner.
Maybe I had a couple from him, but yes,
I've probably got
send
more
it,
than
send it. I'm so greedy. I will take anything. Okay, so the spiraling vines and rosettes. That was a popular pattern used at this time, and the harp on the right is privately owned by a harpist in Dublin. This is a pedal harp, and you see, and it's gold. So I don't know. I really am wondering if Patrick Byrne's harp might have had a gold decoration as a special instrument. And that's the same decoration we have on the HHSI harp, isn't it? And it's gold. Let's just say it was gold.
Well, you can have a look and see. No,
The
yes.
expert, what do you think?
Yeah.
I think it was gold too.
And looking at it, I'm thinking it's gold, but we didn't have a very good camera. I mean, our camera.
Right, but you would do an undersketch in red. And Michael Parfit has seen this on the pedal harps.
Yeah.
But on the other revival Egan harps, I think those would have been green, because they were much simpler, and this is later. This is a later instrument. And here we see, that swirling vines with rosettes, that was a Regency decoration used in the furniture. And Francis Hewson used these swirling vines and rosettes. Francis Hewson was Egan's nephew and successor, and he continued to make wire-strung harps for a time. Only instead of the royal warrant, we see wolfhounds, right? Symbols of independence. And the radiated crown, instead of, the king's lion and unicorn. So back to the Ohio harp. It has acanthus and shamrocks, gold. And sorry,
I misunderstood. When I was talking about gold, I remember like that's gold. You mean the background you were talking about?
no.
Yeah.
I'm wondering. I mean, this would have been red for sure. The royal warrant.
Mhm.
I'm wondering if these
Those.
antique shamrocks would have been gold, or the rosette gold.
Yep.
But it might have been red. We don't know. So this really matches up from the Byrne photo. And the inscription is John Egan, harp maker to His Majesty and the royal family. And here we can see aspects of really bad restoration. The sound box and the knee block are not flush, and they added this really awful bass to it. But at least it survives.
Are you going to say anything about its later career?
Who?
The harp's later career?
Oh, well, do you want to speak about it?
Well,
I think it's fun.
Well, it is fun. I don't know that he's a private person,
I'd
and
love to
I
hear it.
don't know that he wants everyone to drop by or not. I mean,
We don't have to say anything, say it
yeah,
personally.
okay, yeah.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
I will
speak.
talk. You
No, I don't know. I don't know what you're talking
I'll
about.
say,
so-
I mean, I visited.
Yeah,
And
oh,
I-
right.
and
I've
I-
already said that.
I would say too much, so I'm hoping you guys would say it.
What, you mean that it's strung in
Yeah, so
one string?
the person who currently owns it is a harpist, and I was in correspondence with him, and there were all kinds of crazy stories about this harp. So the story is they had this idea that they should go to Dublin. They were an American harpist and a little bit romantic. I'll go to Dublin and I'll find an old Irish harp to play on, because that's what you do, I don't know when this would be in the 70s, so we jumped on a plane, went to Dublin and toured around the antique shops, and they were going, have you got an old Irish harp? No. And they went to this one, and he went, And he went, no, but I've got a frying pan with a hole in.
Have what?
A frying pan with a hole in, it's a kind of joke.
Yeah.
And so they left it, but they thought, that was a good shot. Okay, yeah, I've got these two harps in the back room, do you want to see them? And there was these two harps. They thought, come on, the wreck is much more romantic. So yeah, I'll take it. And there's all kinds of other humorous anecdotes about this buying the harp and how they almost, they took another harpist, who I won't name him either, as a kind of advisor. And the other harpist going, yeah, I know, it's a bit of a wreck, you don't want it. And so they left the shop and off they went. And as soon as they turned the corner, they went, no, I have to get it. So they went back to the shop. and the shopkeeper said, oh yeah, the other guy was in just a minute ago, he wants to buy it. But they got it, and they took it home, and they had their local carpenter glue it together and slap a new bass and everything. And then they toured with it. They strung it in gut and toured with it. And they played as part of a kind of avant-garde psychedelic rock band type thing, where they all wore costumes, and the harp is dressed in a bear costume with a full mask, and played Patrick Byrne's harp, in this psychedelic rock band.
Sorry,
There's a photo of that somewhere.
Everything they said was like, oh my god, it's fantastic.
The owner has a photo?
Yeah, I've got the photo of the band with the harp.
Definitely want that.
With the bear costume, you can make
that the new symbol for the society.
Yes, please.
He also was in New York City, and with the harp, he had a tricycle, a big giant tricycle.
Oh no, that wasn't this harp.
Drove the.
That was a pedal harp.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Very cool.
Anyway. The bear costume and harp.
I'm still crying that I left the country when you tell me all the story of horrors.
Okay, there's another interesting connection here that I noticed from the photograph. There's this brass plate on the photograph, right? A brass band. And it was there, wasn't it? It's been taken off. And look how shiny it is in the calotype. And there was, so I had this really crazy idea. They presented this harp to the graduating student, and they mounted a brass plaque inscribed with the student's name and that of the Irish Harp Society. So, is it possible that that's where they put the little plaque? Because a blind harper could feel it. It'd be right next to him. I mean, I don't know. It's a little crazy.
Not as crazy as playing the harp in the bear.
But look how polished that is on Byrne's harp. And why was it taken off? Well, if it was inscribed, it might be worth something, right? You take it off and sell it. Right?
Keep your eye out in the junk shop.
Sorry, what?
Keep your eye out in the junk shop.
Oh, right,
Turn up someday,
exactly.
won't it?
So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Well,
I'd love to hear it.
the papers, Patrick Byrne papers, he willed this instrument to his patron.
Yeah, and someone
Sure.
here saw it. Is he? Oh, yes, you saw this harp
Yeah.
years ago.
As
Tell
far
us
as I
about that.
And around 1974, I think. I could, around 1974, yeah.
In a glass case. you
In
said.
the Shirley Arms Hotel in Carrickman Cross.
Did it
You
look
walked
like
in,
this?
when you went in the foyer of the hotel, just walking past a big glass case, and a harp was on display in that glass case.
Do
Big-
you remember
top-
if it looks like that?
To
You
me,
don't
it
remember?
seemed, in my memory, it seemed to be brown, but that could be coloured with all the...
Well, it is kind of brownish colour, isn't it?
I wouldn't have taken notice of it much at that time, but I
Right.
know that harp was there in that glass case. I saw it.
I went to the area much later, like 30 some years later, and went to the house, and supposedly there was a harp on the house, or on the wall hanging, and there was a fire. It was during the Troubles, and the Shirley's house was burned, and there's only sort of where the smoke hadn't hit the wall, a shape of a harp there, but I couldn't see it. We couldn't actually get in, so we were having hearsay, and then there's no harp around at that time. Yeah?
I think the reason I was there was some event. I can't remember what it was. I think it might have been a teacher meeting or something. We all happened to be there, and there was talk about the harp. I know that, as to what was the significance of it being there. I know I remember some banter about it, but that's all I can say.
Then supposedly the head of the family was on, across on with a place of residence on Man.
Yes.
And so I was sort of trying to trace that down, and I think ran out of steam, or he died, or couldn't get through it, anything. So it's a big mystery to me. But it sounds like maybe for some reason it got sold as an
Yes.
antique dealer.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, absolutely. I think so. And I'm running a little over.
Carry on.
Thank you. Okay. So the next harp is in the storage facility of the Fitzwilliam Museum in Cambridge, England. And I saw it a few years ago, and I made arrangements to meet the collections manager. And museums, they don't like to publicize these storage facilities, right? Because quite frankly, it's basically a burglar's guidebook, right, if they were to publish it. So it's all very secretive, right? So they faxed me a map. I mean, I was like, I didn't really even use my fax in those days that much, but I was waiting for this fax to come through for days and days. Finally it came through. I had a street name, but no address. And I was told to look for a black door near a coffee bar and a bicycle rack. And since I'm the harp detective, that was very exciting.
Perfectly reasonable and normal.
So I went to this area. There's the bicycle rack. There's the black door, and the collections manager just suddenly appeared. Hello. And he had his key, and we went through the black door, down these corridors, and all these series of locked doors. And then I saw this harp, and it was really fantastic. It's in really good condition, really the best condition of the 6 harps that have come to light. Sorry? Yeah, the paws. That was the neoclassical style of the furniture, the lion's paws. So it bears the inscription J. Egan and Son, 30 Dawson Street, Dublin, harp makers to His Majesty and the Royal Family, number 2044. And really bright shamrocks, really excellent condition. I'm like, why isn't this in Ireland? It's just in this cavern.
Is that gold on the strips?
Yes, gold on the center strip and the outer edge strips. And the gold shamrocks again on the head and the column, the harmonic curve. And then on the back, we
That's
see
serious gold,
bouquets.
isn't it?
Sorry?
That's serious, I mean, it's a gold all over it.
Oh, yes. And you can see this, this chair is actually in our Regency Gallery at the MFA, where I work with the harps, the Boston Museum. And you can see, they call those monopodia, these lions, funny sort of, with the lion's feet. And that's what they copied. That was all the rage in these Regency times and late Regency. And there's a strip around here of plaster and an egg and dart pattern, which was really popular in this Georgian furniture era. And then the inscriptions, you know, in really beautiful condition. So it gives you an idea, you know, I'm trying to imagine these pupils graduating and going out, trying to earn a living. I mean, many of them were blind. They couldn't see it, right? But if they show up at a concert venue and the guests come in and they see, you know, they're used to pedal harps by this time. The 1820s, 1830s, they're used to this kind of decoration. And so they see it on this Irish revival harp and, yes, it's improved. And it, you know, it would have made an impression. So this, the last harp, I have Siobhan Armstrong to thank for this one. We've got a, this is one in France. Got an email, it was the New Year's Day present. That she had been contacted by an owner in France, and she passed it on to me, and I've been in touch with him. And here again, you know, it's the same shape. We can't see much of the inscriptions. I believe there is a serial number there, but it's really not readable. But we see the shamrocks. There's been some work done on this harp. We can see this band is definitely added on the knee block. And a bass has been added. Side strips are not original. You know, maybe the harp was a little fragile and they wanted to keep it and play it, and so they just added bits to keep it together. And they generally take the wire strings off, you know, and string it with gut or nylon. That tends to be what happens.
Have you been to see this one?
Sorry?
Have you been to see
No.
this one? No.
You should know it for me. But still, it's a rare harp, and it's nice to have the measurements to see how it fits in with the others. So I would like to address a misconception about these harps. It has been suggested that Egan just merely changed out the sound box, just used pedal harp sound boxes for his Irish revival harps. So, oh, sorry, here's the close-up of shamrocks. Well, when you look at this Gowdy harp in the National Museum, yes, that really looks that way. You can see there's a pedal harp bass on it even, right? And this would have been wire-strung. But when we look at Egan's and really compare the two, and I've surveyed like, 11 pedal harps and 5 of the Society School harps to really look at this. And no, they don't exactly match up, do they? Because the greatest soundboard width, there's a 2-inch difference. Also the circumference of at the bottom of the semicircular back, there's a 2-inch difference. Number of strings is different, but that can be explained because when you get a pedal harp, you can see the sound box rests on the pedal box. So that frees up more space at the bottom of the soundboard for more strings.
So are the boxes about the same length, or is the Irish ones shorter, would you say?
I don't have those measurements. I wish I did, you know. But still, there's something else we're coming
it
up.
doesn't look like there's
I mean, the pedal harps are much higher, they must be shorter.
it doesn't look like 6 extra strings there.
There's the strings is 43 and 37.
Yeah, but I'm thinking of sitting at an Egan pedal harp, it goes up higher again, I think, but I might be misremembering.
But I'm going to show you something else that really lays this to rest. Okay. Let's look at the back. All right. Well, first of all, okay, Egan's Irish revival harps are ovals, right? The pedal harps are square. Well, look what's inside of the pedal harps. Those are the shutter panels that were really popular in that day. And in my database, which I started compiling in 2002, I looked at all the pedal harps. They all have these, the ones made in this period. They all have shutter panels.
Nancy, can you just tell people what shutter panels are?
Okay,
Don't
yes,
have pedal harps.
yes. There's a special pedal here that operates shutter doors that open and close. And the idea was it would make the harp louder or softer. And they even could get a kind of tremolo effect. There's even like a symbol on pedal harp music for moving the, whoa, 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 for moving the pedal harp. Yes, yes. But Box, who was, one of the greatest harpists of the day, he really poo-pooed it and, this is ridiculous. So it fell out of fashion. But, maybe, Egan gets commissions for these pedal harps and they want shutter panels, so he puts them in. So when we really look at this, it's not the same. Because on these harps with, this is from Fenton House, there are two pieces, laminated conical pieces here on the sides, and a flat piece in the middle. And the society harps are just one smooth circular harp. So I really believe that Egan was making at least three different models. The Irish harps, the portable Irish harps, and the pedal harps. It's very different. So, moving along, I'm almost done. And, thank you for bearing with me. Okay, so on January 22nd, 1842, the Dublin Weekly Register again has the Irish harp. Only this time, it's the additional word of temperance is added to it, right? So the Reverend Burke, president of the Drogheda New Total Abstinence Society, announced, I can hardly say it, announced a proposal for a revival of the Irish harp to be played in musical bands established by the Temperance Society. And some young men in Drogheda had already succeeded in making a harp which was considered well-toned. They hoped to make at least a dozen more. And it had been 3 years since the closing of the Belfast Irish Harp Society. And the Drogheda School was the last school of its kind. It was believed that young boys preoccupied with learning to play the harp would certainly reject the temptations of alcohol.
Well, certainly.
Absolutely.
But anyway, that's what they really believed. And by the pupils themselves, supervised by a local craftsman, Francis Flood. And as we mentioned before, one of them still survives. And I went to this man's house and saw this harp and just couldn't believe it, really. It would seem that the stated goal of the Dublin Society 30 years earlier to diffuse the improvement throughout the country had to some extent been realized. Because this is the same improved Irish harp in the same form as the one that John Egan played. And Hugh Fraser, the Drogheda teacher, he may well have played an Egan harp because he was at the school with Patrick Byrne. Right. And so maybe he was given an Egan harp upon graduation. And it looks like it, it's high-headed. And it has these wonderful paintings. It's almost as if the soundboard is a canvas with all of these nationalistic symbols. Here we have Brian Boru, copied from an image that they would have known from the time. On the right, we have a scene from Monaster Boys, and it was reproduced in books of the time.
Is there a canvas on top?
Sorry?
Is there a canvas on top?
Canvas?
No.
Oh, it's wood. I just said it appeared like a canvas painting.
The surface.
Yeah, like, because it was white on the back and, yeah, but no, it's wood, it's all wood. And when you see it, this is very similar, isn't it? I mean, these really plump shamrocks, you know.
So it's like your local man has the Egan harp in the shop and copies it. Yeah.
Yeah, but it also looks like
Because
it's
it's not
plastered
big,
when he
right?
copied it.
Sorry, what?
Well, temperance my eye, it looks like this artist. It looks like he was completely plastered when he was doing this. It's dreadful.
I know.
Absolutely
You
dreadful.
know, I'm thinking
Yeah.
somebody who's like a local wheelwright or something that hasn't had art training or instrument making training, you know, it's...
Yeah, I'm just
But-
having a
but
laugh.
you know,
It's
I
just-
mean-
But yes.
When I saw the pictures, because the owner sent me, photographed paper copies. That this owner, it was quite something to even get there. He has no internet, no email. I couldn't phone him. We corresponded with letters over several months.
It's very appropriate to start.
And
Where's the?
in Drogheda. But it's, the Irish Traditional Music Archive has copies of these photos for posterity. But, and I wrote an article in History Ireland magazine about this. But I will not reveal the location because it's burglar's guidebook, right? But when he sent me a paper photograph of it, and I thought, I'm not sure I want to go and see this. But when you actually see it, it's so historical. It's so handmade. It has a presence.
You see these shamrocks and they look very crude, as opposed to the Egan ones, but they have the shading and all, and somebody
Well, yes.
all the
Yes.
to just shade them
Yeah.
to make them.
Yeah, they really, spent some time on this. And then here we have, our Gaelic speakers. Do you want to read the right?
Up
Ireland
Ireland.
Forever.
Effectively.
Let's say Eric Gabraw first. It sounds a bit better than just going up Ireland. What's
The
the one
other
on the right?
one, I think, is Young Ireland. Because that was the society popular at that time in the 1840s.
Aero, what's underneath Aero? I can't see from here.
It's, I've shown it to some people and I think the word is misspelt.
Maybe it's
It has been,
Iron.
Can't make out the letters.
yeah.
Infna, it's IMP, Infna, and
It could be,
It
it's
could
like
be
the
R.
R.
it could be an S.
Infna.
This is
You
cool.
can take a peek at the screen, Siobhan. It's more.
No,
Yeah,
the
you
string,
know,
the
it's
string
in
is
there.
in front of the string is in front
Right.
of the letter.
Yeah, I think it's
Photo
INS
of
at the beginning.
Oh, I see. IMS. Insna Nocht. Insna Nocht is isn't it to uncover or something? Where's William?
No, where's William? William, go on.
Is that like shows that you can?
Living Young Ireland.
Yeah.
Do it.
1800s.
No, you can see it from the other side. You can get a picture from the other side.
It's very interesting though. But when we think about the harp in the National Museum, it has Gaelic instruments also. And the figure 8 shamrocks. And then these symbols, Catholic symbols. This is the papal crown. I thought it was a turkey when I looked at
Looks delicious.
But I hope I'm not offending anyone.
Get that in the oven.
But it's actually the owner told me it was a papal crown with the cross keys of St. Peter. And then this is an eagle with a shield and there's a cross in the shield.
The other one looks more like a bird.
Yeah. But it really is a handcrafted, look at that.
Oh, I like this.
Isn't that amazing? And this is kind of like a sleeve on top of the ceremonies. That may have been a further improvement, But look
Is
at the
it, or is it a
thickness.
repair? Is it cracked underneath? Or?
I think this was a repair. that was nailed on a
Yeah.
brass band, and then it's just disintegrated. You know, it might have been not brass, but a cheaper metal. I don't know, I think it's really interesting,
It's
this
gorgeous,
harp.
I like it.
You know, and so historic, you know, really historic. Okay. So we know from Patrick Cooney's article on the Drogheda Harp Society that 5 students from the Harp Society played a welcome to Daniel O'Connell at this monster repeal meeting at the Hill of Tara. And that harp was played there because that story has been passed down through the family. That Drogheda harp was there. Isn't that exciting? I get a kick out of that kind of thing. But we can see how the harp, you know, the harp was such a symbol. The wolfhound, the round towers, all of those were nationalistic symbols for Ireland, for Irish independence. There were hundreds of thousands of people there. This was in 1843.
100,000 people.
So it's difficult to accurately assess the impact of Egan's improved Irish harp on Ireland's harping tradition and the revival efforts.
Can you just wait this out?
We should just wait for
Yeah, oh.
Nancy's article, because we've
So,
got
that's
so,
my
this
article.
is, so we have this in the
we have
library.
a
so you
wonderful
can-
article in the library, so
Oh,
you
thank
just go
you.
and have a read.
read it. I'll leave it on the front here so you can.
Yeah, it's funny, I had a phone call one morning, and it was like, what's his name, Nancy, you know, it's the editor of the magazine, and he says, you know, we're having trouble with your picture. Can we go to his house and take another photo of this picture? And Nicholas Carolyn actually knows the man who owns, you know, Nicholas is from Drogheda. And so then I was on to Nicholas, and we're trying to get, he's hard of hearing, he doesn't pick up his telephone. So then I had the phone number of the owner's housekeeper. And one thing and another, we were just frantically, you know, we need to go to press, we need to get this photograph. And eventually, someone had, you know, a great computer program, and they just cleaned up the image, and it was fine, and they didn't have to contact him. But, you know, he's quite elderly, and may not answer the door to someone saying, oh, I'm here to photograph your harp, you know, blah, blah, blah. But after I did write the article and I sent it to the owner, he was thrilled. He was absolutely thrilled. Because he said he's told people, he's mentioned this harp to people over the years, and people poo-pooing it, nobody interested, oh, that old thing. No one interested at all. And he was really indebted to me for this article, just to bring it to light, to show what an important instrument this is. So it was a privilege. Why me? I don't know. But I'm just, you know, really glad that it's out there now and people can know about it. So anyway, thinking about the significance of these harps, you know, what part did they play in the overall history? Well, it's of significance that the Society school teachers and students had a direct link to the Belfast meeting of 1792. And this was one of the last teachers, Valentine Rinning, who had been a pupil of Arthur O'Neill. And Arthur O'Neill had performed at the Belfast meeting. So for at least a time, the music had continued to be taught and played. And Egan's revival harps were vital to this process. It's interesting to note that in 1821, when the king visited Dublin, Irish harps were played before the king here at Dublin's Mansion House before George IV. There he is in all his regalia.
Now, see, you might mention what street the Mansion House is on.
Oh, yes, it's right across the street, it's Dawson Street, right across from John Egan's premises. And I believe, you know, I'm thinking, how did he get a shop on Dawson Street? Well, this is post-Union Ireland. Well, there was this exodus to London, and many of these shops became vacant. Many of the great big houses in Dublin became vacant because all the MPs, the lords, went to London now because the Irish Parliament was dissolved, and now rule came from London, and so they went off to London, and so I think that's how John Egan probably was able to buy his shop or rent his shop. This is from Armstrong, this program, and we see that 2 former pupils of the Belfast School played Irish melodies. 2 of them, sorry, 4 pupils played there, and 2 of them, Rennie and McBride, had been teachers at the school. So you can see the names of the harpers listed there. And that's Rennie on the left.
I've never seen that picture before.
Sorry?
I've never seen that picture before. Where is it?
Really? I'll just see where I got that.
I don't know.
I'd like a copy of that.
Yeah,
I've never
we
seen
just
it.
swapped. There's also a really great one, color one, of Patrick Byrne at the Ulster Museum, that they were going to charge an arm and a leg for me to.
So you saw the ones of Pat Byrne in the
Yes, there's
North,
another
so-
one that's really
So that's in private hands in the north.
Yes,
So.
yeah.
But apparently one of those is colour as well, but it's just a black and white
Oh,
reproduction
really?
of it.
Okay, well, there is another one
Yeah. Okay.
that's at the Ulster Museum. Yeah, I
Good.
can send you a link to that. So, finally, you'll be glad to hear. What about the sound?
Yeah.
What did they sound like? That's what we want to know, really. So, Joan Rimmer. Well, Karen Loomis was talking about Joan Rimmer yesterday. Here she pops up again. Wrote this famous quote talking about the Egan harps. Their tone is peculiarly unattractive, rather like that of an ancient and decrepit piano. And the sound is excessively long-lasting unless damped. Okay? Well, she wrote that in the 1960s.
So is she talking about the wire-strung
Yes.
ones or
Yes.
the gut-strung ones? The
And
What
the
wire-
big
harp?
society.
What harp did she play? Was it strung up to pitch? Did it have new strings?
It's hardly a complaint to say that the
Yes.
resonance continues, is it?
That was the next thing I was going to say. That's what a wire-strung harp
Yeah.
should sound like, okay? But that quote has been copied. You know, when you're doing research, you just see the same stuff repeated in several different volumes. And when I started my research in 2002, the Grove Dictionary article said the sound of the Egan harps is deemed to be peculiarly unattractive. Right? And I think that author had picked it up from Joan Rimmer's little book,
Yes.
right? And now I've played almost 20 Egan harps. I own one. Shameless promotionalism. I think I brought up about 4 CDs if anybody's interested. I've recorded on an Egan harp,
But these are all the
These
big
are
gut-strung
gut-strung.
ones.
Gut-strung ones.
but it is a gorgeous sound.
But she's talking about the wire-strung ones, not the gut-strung ones. So
Right, but
So-
people have picked that, they don't know, oh, it's an Egan harp. They don't distinguise between wire-strung
Right,
and
so
gut-strung,
they're-
as you know.
So they're using her
People don't
description of the
distinguish,
wire
do they?
ones to
So they
describe
just,
the
oh, an
gut-strung
Egan harp, well, it had a poor sound, right?
Mhm.
So, even if I do nothing else in this life, at least I can tell you, I have revised the Grove Dictionary article, which came out this year, and the last sentence in my article was, Egan harps in playable condition have a clear, bright tone.
But which Egan harp? The wire ones or the gut ones? Or are you saying all?
I
of
think I
them?
said the
Okay,
gut strung,
okay, so-
yeah,
okay.
I have to look at
All
it.
right.
But at least, you know, to put that myth to rest, right?
But it kind of
Well,
makes
it's not
sense, you know,
quite
if he's a
like
good instrument maker that can make a harp with gut string speak well, you'd think he could.
Well,
No, not necessarily.
Okay, so yeah, let's talk about the wire-strung harp. And how can we know, did it have a good sound or not such a good sound? Okay, well, these are the only references I have found so far. Armstrong said of his Egan Irish harp, it is unlikely any harper would be dissatisfied with the tone of the specimen described.
So he had his up and running
but
then.
you see, what's Joan Rimmer
Yeah.
comparing with? She's saying it's like a decrepit piano, but what's she comparing it with?
I don't know.
What's her, maybe she has no concept of what it should sound
Well,
like.
no, she's never heard
Exactly.
no
Had Joan Rimmer ever heard an early Irish harp?
The Trinity.
Well, I reckon it probably wasn't up to the pitch.
So she was,
And it
so
does
she
sound like
she-
a
Yeah, well,
Right.
it's obviously
Absolutely, yes, yes.
irresponsible.
But can you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Researchers and students and whatnot, people writing articles say, oh, here's a book on the Irish harp. In fact,
Oh, yeah.
Simon was talking about this earlier. Oh, it's a source. I'll just copy that. I
Yeah.
might just leave out that it was actually on the chapter on the wire-strung harps. It's an Egan harp, right? Copy it, republish it, reprint it. There's just a lot of sloppy.
Well, it just seems
information.
highly unlikely that an instrument maker of such high quality as
Yeah.
Egan and everybody knowing him for a very good harp maker would put out an instrument that people didn't think sounded good.
And I don't think Arthur
Thank you for saying that.
I don't think Arthur O'Neill would let his students play on instruments that have
Okay, well let me just finish what I think, which is what you think. Okay, all right. Okay, Dr. Petrie, am I pronouncing?
Petrie,
Petrie.
the world is still.
Okay, right. Who also had a wire-strung Egan harp. Well, he lamented the lack of carving, right? And so the quote from him that's just regurgitated is all about, oh, it's not taken out of context. He's talking about the carving. Well, no, we, the Irish Harp Societies, we want something cheap, portable, right? We're not going to spend money on carving. We're going to paint them. That's what people want now. That's how the pedal harps are. They want paint. They want gold painted. We want nationalistic shamrocks, right? So, but Petrie also says, these harps were of good form and size, rich in tone, and of excellent workmanship.
Which is what we expect from them.
Okay, and then, so perhaps the best proof of the quality of sound, we need to look no further than the success of the Belfast School students, right? They went on to have professional careers, playing their harps for concerts and playing at hotels. And of course, it's Patrick Byrne. Look at Patrick Byrne. Did audiences just come to hear him because he was marketed as the last Irish harper? I don't think so. I believe it was a combination of his skill, the music, and the sound of the harp. And we know from reviews of Patrick Byrne, he could extract an extraordinary range of timbres and dynamics from his harp, described as a whisper like the sigh of the rising wind on a summer eve, rising to a clang with martial fierceness, from fairy music heard from a distance, to a deep rumbling in the bass, and sounds of the fall of an axe on armor. So there was a huge range of dynamics on these harps. With his Egan harp, Byrne even succeeded for a time in reviving the practice of patronage. And once again, he brought the Irish harp back to an honored place in the royal court, albeit an English one. But it is my hope that one day a maker will build an historically accurate replica of an Egan Irish
Yes, absolutely.
improved Irish harp,
Okay.
just as our Boston Museum has commissioned a copy of the Bunworth. And then we'll have a better grasp of how these harps really sounded.
Great
Thank
idea.
you.